My name is Jason Chatraw, and I'm here today with my friend Brandon Freeman, and we're going to be talking about Christians and filmmaking and just some discussions we've been having online and the role that Christians play in that. Maybe not as much as we'd like, maybe a different role than we've seen. So we're going to talk about that today, and Brandon has a film that he's working on. It's called Mark of the Veil. And Brandon, can you tell me a little about the timeline for that project and kind of what how you're going to be getting that project out when you get it finished?
Sure, yeah. Well, our goal is to be filming next year, 2012. We're hoping to have everything done by June or July, and have the film finished, edited, all cut together by 2013. At that point, as far as getting it out, we're going to be hitting a number of different markets. We're going to be trying to get into the Netflix market. We're going to try to get into iTunes, Amazon, those kind of things, those kind of online streaming kind of deals. We're playing around with the idea of connecting with a local band or two, having their music in the film, and then teaming up with them and going on like a concert and film tour kind of around the country, 2 or 3 month trip. And that kind of be the way we kind of raise awareness. We show the film, have a concert, sell DVDs and such, and then also, just kind of creates that sort of momentum. Having said that, we'll also be looking at the traditional avenues of distribution as well. We'll be, going to festivals and going to, some of the film market, things like that. And, we'll just kind of be hitting all our bases. But our main really emphasis, for me anyway, is just to really focus on the sort of the newer distribution tools that are out there, which are really driven by the content creator instead of like a publishing type thing. So I kind of like the idea of really having a real hand in getting it out there. So.
Okay, now before we get into kind of the details about the film, some of the things that we've been talking about and just having some conversations about, what it looks like for Christians in a filmmaking industry and what that looks like. I mean, there's been some, there's a lot of different ideas. We've seen a lot of different things. The way that people, come across and present films. All the way from you've got rated R, Passion of the Christ to some of your more generic stuff that local-based churches are doing. So if you can tell me, as far as from your perspective, when it comes to Hollywood, Christians, they often make it as an example of what's wrong with our culture. As a Christian filmmaker, how do you perceive what types of films are coming out of Hollywood right now?
Well, I think I've heard a lot of people say, or Christians say, that there's an agenda, there's a Hollywood agenda, or they're trying to shift the culture, and I have a hard time buying that. I think what we see happen in the media and in Hollywood and politics and everything is just a result of where people are at, good, bad, or indifferent. So I don't necessarily have the same negative connotation towards maybe some of the I don't know, the darker, the raunchier, whatever stuff that comes out. I just see that as stuff that I personally don't want to be involved with. And I'd rather just not focus on it. I think a lot of people put a lot of emphasis on we've got to change we've got to change the people that are doing this stuff, or whatever. We got to boycott or whatever. And for me, honestly, I just rather just not give energy to it and just focus on putting out my own message. And I think that's really just comes down to what a filmmaker is supposed to do. It is not supposed to try to, pander to the crowd or anything like that, but just tell a good story. So I think, obviously there's a lot of stuff, a lot of overt sexual tones and things like that I know for me, I don't go there just because it doesn't, I don't think it's right, and I certainly don't want my kids exposed to it. But I think that me as a parent, and speaking from the parent perspective, I just have a responsibility to guide my child. And if she happens to see something that I wouldn't want her to see, not to freak out and get mad and yell at somebody, but just to sit down and say, okay, kiddo, so this is what we saw. What do you think about this? And actually process it. So, it's kind of a roundabout answer, but I think we put so much negative energy on the people that are in Hollywood right now and doing these kinds of things from a Christian perspective. We put so much negative energy towards that and have sort of an attitude, saying things like Holly weird and things like that are really hurtful and aren't helpful to reaching to reaching folks who are in that industry. One of my hopes actually is that and this is kind of one of those pie in the sky dreams, but one of my hopes is that if I were ever to become large enough to be sort of in that playing field, I'm not right now, I'm just an indie filmmaker in Idaho, but if I were ever large enough to be in that field, that there would be a level of a comfortable approachableness to me, that even though people know that I'm Christian and that I have this certain set of values and beliefs, that I'm not going to react negatively to them or be quick to get defensive, like I have to protect myself from you or something like that. I think, the Bible says, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. So to me that translates to, I don't need to be afraid of, oh, they're doing something I don't believe in. It's okay. It's okay. I can still be there. I can still be a presence. And in fact, I'm going to make more impact and make people think more about what I'm saying if I'm more focused on what I'm saying and less on what they're saying. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my thought process.
Yeah, with that. That's good. Now, we look at the box office. I mean, there have been some Christian films, or I guess films that would, promote a very strong Christian message over the last few years that have, done really well in the box office. I mean, they, made a lot of money. How come there's not, at least from your perspective, how come you don't think there's more of those types of films being produced if that's obvious that the consuming public is interested in seeing these types of movies?
Well, I think that is a movement that is growing. I think we're seeing, we're seeing a few key churches in particular that are, sort of taking that initiative to start making films that really reach that audience. And I think they're, for what they're doing, they've got a great approach. For me, the challenge is, and I think why it doesn't take off in a larger context, is it really, in my opinion, I think Christian films as they are now are so focused on making sure all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted for theological purposes, that it becomes a sermon instead of a story. And that's great for folks who are going expecting a sermon, but I'm a Christian, and if I want to go to a sermon, I'll go to church on Sunday. When I go see a film, I want to experience something that's a little more open, that's a little more challenging. It's not just kind of preaching to the choir. And I am the choir. I'm a Christian. Everything I do, I am a Christian. Wearing a shirt that says Jesus is just that easy. So it's not that I want to downplay my Christianity, but I want to work a little bit more for the metaphor. I don't want it to just. When Jesus told stories, he lost most of his crowd. He did not appeal to his crowd by saying, really obvious, easy things. He said things that were challenging and even inflammatory to his culture, and so I think not inflammatory to necessarily like a non-believer, but more the religious type, really, because it's kind of those people that think they have it kind of all together, and this is kind of what we're expecting, and that's who Jesus would kind of come in and poke at. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to be poked at. I'm looking to be, as a viewer, I love having a story that's not trying to obviously shape what I'm thinking, but it's just questioning. It's questions, because those questions make me talk, and that talk makes me process and kind of chew it over. Whereas if I just go to a sermon, it's kind of the old thing when you go to a sermon, it's a great sermon, you walk out, you tell telling somebody how great a sermon is, they say, "What was it?" It was a really good sermon. I mean, I think, if there's not more, if I'm not personally engaged with the story, then I don't know, it loses the emphasis for me. And the reason why I kind of say all that is, I've seen a few Christian films, and for me, there's a couple things that are always an instant cringe factor. And I hate to say that because I don't want to be mean, but I mean, the cringe factor isn't. I mean, we always need to make sure we're investing into acting and writing and all these kinds of things. But again, it's those. I can always tell where the conversations have been in terms of crafting the story of no, we need to make sure that here this person accepts Jesus, and here this theology needs to be, and this doctrine needs to be explained here. And again, it kind of takes away from the story of someone walking through something, and it becomes a program. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason that hasn't taken off is because I don't think people go to films wanting to get pitched a program. And I think even a lot of Christians don't really want to go to a film to get pitched about a program. I mean, the movies that draw us are movies that are very Old Testament, and they're things like Gladiator and Lord of the Rings, and these things that are they've got darkness, they've got light. There's a battle. There's questions that are left to you, the viewer, to sort of wrestle with yourself. There's not a clear here's the gospel. And so I guess I would wrap it up with that. I would say that I think Christian films need to emulate that more. Mm-hmm. and focus less on making sure that everyone leaves that theater knowing what the filmmaker believes, and more that they leave the theater thinking, "Wow, that was a great story. Hey, what do you think about that? What do you think about when so and so did that?" I mean, that's kind of I had a situation like that not too long ago where that kind of and again, that's what you want. You want those kind of discussions. I think of things like Lost, the TV show Lost. I mean, how many unending discussions I've heard about that show, and it didn't really preach any kind of message. It just introduced us to people that we cared about, and it allowed us to walk through this very surreal, crazy, multi-layered metaphor thing that I didn't think always was well executed. But we were connected, and there were so many things to chew on. And there were bad things and there were good things, and I mean, I guess it's just kind of like life. And in life, there are good things and there are bad things, and you take the good and you don't just throw out you don't just throw out the bad. You examine the bad, you analyze it, but you have to sort of have to walk through your own life. And I think if Christian films did that more, I think we would see more of an interest in that market.